It will start the very last line of Samach Hamad Aleph of 6584. So Venotin La Kipa, he'll give her some type of head covering. So Amarle Rav Papa Labaye, Rav Papa said to Abaye, Hai Tana Shleach Artulai, Virami Misane. So according to this, it said that you give her clothes that are worth 50 coins a year, but 3 pairs of shoes a year for every regal. So Abaye says, is this Tana naked but wearing shoes? So it's ridiculous. If you're naked and wearing shoes, what's the point of wearing the shoes? If you're not wearing any clothes, what's the point? So how come you're giving her so many shoes? So Amarle, Abaye, Rav Papa said to Abaye. So Amarle, Abaye answered, Tana b'makom harim kai. This was in a place where there were a lot of mountains. Dolosagya below Tolosazuga Masane. You can't survive a year with less than 3 pairs of shoes. And by the way, it teaches us the Nesveni Halabamoy that you should give him to her by the time of the Chagim, so that she will have simcha with them. So right. Only 3 pairs of shoes. Halavai. Right, halavai, they would be happy with 3 pairs of shoes a year, but there is halacha that to give your wife clothes or jewelry or whatever for yantif. So give her the shoes around the time of yantif, so she could be happy with the shoes on yantif. So it's telling us another halacha that you give it 3 times a year. Not that they need to be given 3 times a year, but you could be yotze, you could get a 2-for-1. The kalim shel chamishim zuz, and clothes that are worth 50 zuz. Amar Abaye chamishim zuz pshite, 50 simple zuzim. Mimai, how do we know that they're simple and not? So there were 2 types of coins. There were the regular coins, and then there were coins from. So I was very confused for many years because it's called kesef tsuri. Now the word tsuri in let's say to redeem meiser sheni, it has to be minted coins. You can't use a bill. You can't use bullion to redeem Meiser Sheni, which is the Meiser that has to be brought to Yerushalayim. You could redeem it onto a coin, and the Kedusha will transfer from the item to the coin. We learned a little bit about the transferring in regard to Shemitah, that if you buy it, even though there's limitations how you buy it, the Kedusha goes to a coin. But that coin probably doesn't have to be a minted coin the way Meiser Sheni is. There's a special drasha from the Pasuk. But Vitzarta kesef. But the word from the word Vitzarta, we talk about kesef turi has to be a minted coin. But there's another kesef, and this confused me for many years, that there's a place called Tzur, which in English the name is Tyre, Tyre, not the tire store over here, but Tyre, which is a port city. So in that place, their coins were all minted out of real silver. So those coins were like 6 times or 8 times as valuable as the regular coins because they all had real silver in them. So sometimes the Gemara says kesef tsuri, it doesn't mean minted coins. It means kesef from tsur, from Tyre, which is made out of real silver. So it's more valuable. So Abaye says, I know that these are 50 regular zuzim, not the silver zuzim. How do I know this? Because the Mishnah said, but Medamam remember about Nabi Yisrael. When is this talking about? This is talking about a poor person for Yisrael, but with a more honorable person during a higher tax bracket. It depends on their status, on which tax bracket they're in. And if you think it's literally 50 zuz, ani 50 zuz minale. How does a poor person have 50 of these silver zuz? That's several years worth of money. I think we said months and months ago that the 200 zuz for Kesuva, I think that's equivalent to if someone would have that amount of money, they could buy a plot of land and be self-sufficient. They wouldn't be rich, but it was like the 40 acres. So, I don't know if we discussed it in regard to Kesuva, but I think in regard to tzedakah, maybe we spoke about it a little bit. Did we talk about it by Shemitah already? But there's a halacha if someone has less than 200, I think it's less than 200 zuz, Mishnah and Peah, they don't get the certain types of tzedakah, the weekly tzedakah from the city. But if they're involved in business and they had 50 zuz, then they don't get tzedakah either, because if you're making deals, you're 50 zuz with the pshat in that, it seems to be what we call the velocity of money. If you have 50 zuz, but you're constantly making deals, buying and selling, it's as if you have 200 coming around. but 50 silver zuz is several years worth of stuff. So it must be talking about simple 50 zuz, not the 50 silver zuz. So when the Mishnah says that you buy your clothes of 50 zuz, it's regular 50 zuz, not the silver zuz. Yeah, so article says that in Tzur they were worth 8 times as much because they had real silver. The ain't nosin lola chadashim. We don't give her new clothes in the summer and worn clothes in the winter. Rather, you give her the new clothes in the winter because they're thicker and they're warmer, and then as she wears them, they wear out, and then it's cooler for her in the summer. Tanarabanan, moser mizonos labal, moser belos laisha. If she had extra food that she doesn't use, that goes to the husband. But if she had uh, extra the worn out clothes, she gets to keep the worn out clothes. So the Gemara says, "Moser belosa isha lamala." Why does she need worn out clothes? She got new clothes. Why does she need the worn out clothes? Amarachva. So I guess this Amora's name was Rachava. Shemis kasab hamimeni dasa b'kedei shlo tizgana al ba'ila. She'll use them when she's in Nida so that she wouldn't be, her husband wouldn't be revolted by her that she wears the same clothes all the time. So when she would be Anita, she'd wear the worn out clothes, and when she wasn't Anita, she'll wear the newest clothes. Now, one thing that we have to understand about this Mishnah is that what's the context of our Mishnah talking about? Our Mishnah was talking about Hamishar Sishtoi De Shalish. They're living separately. And you're giving a trustee or a third party money and stuff to give to her. So if they're not living together, why does she need the extra clothes? Shalom bias. No, so Rabbi Rosenthal, Zechron Levracha, he was the rabbi for the Lubavitch Masifta, their first building on Morse, but it had earlier been in the East Rogers Park and before there was in the West Side. So he was a real European. I didn't realize till I was old. I mean, I remember him, and I didn't know till much later that I never understood his speeches because he spoke in Yiddish. I didn't realize he was speaking in Yiddish. But I mean, if I go up with my grandfather, he would say hello. He would speak in English to me, but his drashos were always in Yiddish. And he was, they said that he could do the pin test. That if you put a pin through any word in the Gemara, he could tell you what words on the Amud Beis and the neck and the other things. So when he was the type when he wanted to, only had one daughter. He didn't have any son. So he learned with her. She's a real she's a very knowledgeable person, his daughter. And the stories how he found a son-in-law was, he wrote a certain question, and none of the boys answered, but then one boy said, well, what's the right answer? And that's the one who he took as a son-in-law. You've heard stories like that, so that's what he did. So also when he needed a new chazan at the shul, he put an ad in some Yiddish newspaper in New York, and Chazan Birnbaum from Borough Park answered the ad, and he hired Chazan Birnbaum, but Mrs. Birnbaum refused to leave Borough Park. So Chazan Birnbaum was at Chicago, and Mrs. Birnbaum was still in Borough Park. So whenever Rabbi Rosenthal would talk about Shalom Bayis, he would say, like, Chazan Birnbaum and his wife, they never have arguments. So he would. That's why we say Shalom Bayis, because that was the Ma'aser Shahaya in Sharei Torah Anshe Marav.
So he was a Lubavitcher?
No.
Oh. But he was at the shul on Howard by Damon, right?
No, it wasn't on Howard. It wasn't on Howard. It was somewhere else in East Rogers Park. Maybe it was even on Devon. Even I don't know.
Okay.
I have some. We could find the old address. I don't remember the old address, but it was somewhere in East Rogers Park before it moved to California Morse. But the point is that he used Chazan Birnbaum as the example of Shalom Bayis. So the question is, so in this case, why would she need the extra clothes? So according to the opinion that for Shabbos they'd be together. Okay, so it could be 1 or 2 weeks of the month of the Shabbosos of the month she'd be Anita, so she'd be the clothes for there. I don't have a better answer than that. Unless this brisa is not at all talking about our Mishnah's case. Our brisa, Rashi says about this thing, Moser Belos, the extra worn out clothes, but it wouldn't be the extra, just the worn out clothes. Rashi says the case is Almana Hanizonas Minichse Soma Velan Litan Lakim Shachamish Zuz Mishan Loshana. So it's not talking about our case. The Bryce is not talking about our case of the Mishnah, but it's talking about a woman, a widow, who her kids or her husband's kids, the Yisomim, the estate is paying for it, so she has to get the 50 years worth of clothes. Oh no, that's on the next phrase. This Rashi. So Amar Amar Abaye says Naktinan. Therefore, we say that most are below Salman of the Yorshav. If it's leftover clothes of the widow, she doesn't get to keep them because her husband is dead. She could wear the same clothes if she's Anita, if she's not Anita, it doesn't matter. Because the whole reason of Rachava was that the husband shouldn't not be happy with her that she wears the same clothes when she's Anita, when she's not Anita. So it doesn't apply when she's a widow. But Hasam hu delo tiskane ba'ape, but hacha tiskane v'tiskane. Because the reason that Rachava says that she gets to keep it, so it has to be talking about the case in our Mishnah, even though she's not. She'd only be need it once or twice a month, one night, 1 or 2 nights a month on the Shabbosos. It's only so he wouldn't want to see her in the clothes when she's Anita and when she's not Anita, the same clothes. But hacha tiskane visisgane. But here, if she's widowed, there's no husband who's needs to see her in the other clothes, so it doesn't matter. So she doesn't get to keep it. That's what Abai says based on Rechava's reason. Nosin ma kesef. She gets a ma kesef, a silver ma for incidental needs. Mayocheles. So we already discussed this, but here's where the Gemara says, where the Gemara discussed the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that she eats with him from Erev Shabbos every Friday night. So we discussed if Ocheles means literally she eats, or if it's a lashon nakiya euphemism that they have marital relations at night. So this is where the main machlokas amoraim is, even though we kind of discussed it already. Tanarban, Mayocheles, what does it mean that she eats with him? Rav Nachman Amar Ocheles Mamish. Rav Nachman says they eat together. So Rav Ashi Amar Tashmish. Rav Ashi says it's marital relations. Tanan. We learned in our Mishnah, Ocheles Olei Shabbos. The Mishnah says she eats with him on Shabbos night. We understand if it's literally eating. That's why the Mishnah says she eats, the word ocheles. But if it's marital relations, my ocheles, why does the Mishnah use the word ocheles? So the Gemara says, Lishna ma'alya, it's a nicer lashon to mean something not as nice. Kidiksiv, achla umachsa pia. The adulterous woman eats and wipes her mouth and says, I didn't do anything wrong. So achla, the pasuk there is in Mishlei, that achla means that she was having adulterous relationships, and it says the word achla. Now, when we learned the Mishnah, I mentioned, according to some opinions, the word ochel, lachem asher ochel by Yosef, and Potiphar's wife, the pasuk there, according to many opinions, ochelas is means relations with the wife. So if that's a pshat, why does the Gemara not bring that pasuk, a pasuk in Chumash rather than pasuk in Mishlei? So I mean, it's not a huge question, but I think we could answer it based on what the Rambam says in Igeris Kiddush Hashem when he talks about proof for Tchias HaMesim. So he says there's a lot of psukim that indicate Tchias HaMesim, but you could explain all those other psukim in a way that they're a parable or something like that. Except there's one pasuk, I think it's in Daniel, that it's unequivocal that there's no other way to explain the word other than that it's Tchias HaMesim. So here too, the pasuk in Yosef, it's not unequivocal. There are opinions that the Egyptians wouldn't eat with foreigners because of their beliefs, and the other people ate meat and they didn't eat meat. So it could be taken literally that they didn't eat together. That pasuk, when it says the word ochel in that pasuk, it might literally be talking about eating. But this pasuk in Mishlei, we could say that pasuk is unequivocally using the verb ochel to mean sexual relationship. Mesabe, they asked a question against Rav Ashi. If Shimon Gamliel Omer achos b'lei Shabbos b'lei Shabbos v'Shabbos. If Shimon Gamliel says that she eats with him on Friday night and on Shabbos day, so Bishlam Amar Achila makes sense if you say it's literally eating. They eat in the evening, they eat in the day. Hainu Diktamini v'Shabbos. That's why it also says they eat together on Shabbos day. Elamad Amar Tashmish Shabbos Meika. But according to the opinion that it means marital relations, as their marital relations on Shabbos day, Rav Huna says that the Yisrael are kadoshim, are holy. So kadosh, holy isn't necessarily the best translation for kadosh. We'll see in a few weeks after Pesach. Harshas kadoshim. What's kadoshim to you? Rashi says prushim to you. You should be separated things, even things that you're allowed to do. You shouldn't necessarily do so much. So the Yisrael are separate, they make separations and they don't have relations in the daytime. I think I mentioned about Yitzchak and Dror last week or 2 weeks ago. So I mean the halacha is that the marital relations should only take place in a dark room. So daytime it's not okay. But the poskim all say that if you cover the windows and it's dark, there's no isser, there's no prohibition to have relations during the daytime. It's just that the tznius thing is that it's in a dark room. So if you cover the window, which according to the Sifsei Chachamim is what Yitzchak did in Gror, I don't know if we have to say that it was necessarily nighttime. It could have been daytime. It could have been nighttime. Also, you covered the window, but so Rava answered, "B'vais afel motor. If it's a dark house, it's mutter. So they're allowed to have relations in the daytime. So there is a machlokas rishonim. There's several opinions, different ways. So from this opinion, so from the pashtus, I think from the simple reading of this halacha over here, why does Rabbi Shimon Gamliel say Shabbos night and Shabbos day? So remember in the Mishnah or the previous Mishnah we had the recommended time for ona of when the husband should be with the wife for different professions. So we had some professions are every night, some are multiple times. If they're in town, easy professions, multiple times a week. Some people are once a week. Then we have some of the camel drivers are about once a month, and then the people, the sailors who go on the ships are once every 6 months. So the shaila is, what happens with the Mishnah, the halacha in our Mishnah that says that she eats with him every Friday night, and those different times. According to this, it's a uniform. It doesn't matter what profession it was. They're together every Friday night. So some Rishonim say that that once they're separated, not living together, even the camel driver or the sailor, normally their ona is once every month or once every 6 months. They have to be with their wife every Shabbos. Now, obviously, if the sailor's out of town, is overseas, he can't be with every Friday night. But the point is that those Rishonim say that the halacha of once they're separated, they're going to see each other more often. It's kind of silly, but that's what some Rishonim say. Some Rishonim say the opposite, that some of the couples who they would that the previous Mishnah said that they would be together more than once a week because of the separation, they're only together once a week. It's less. It's possible that Rabbi Shimon Gamliel here says Leilei Shabbos v'Shabbos he might hold that according to the opinion to the people whose ona is twice a week. So it'd be twice a week in the span of within 1 24-hour period would be the 2 nights. It wouldn't be separated, let's say, a Tuesday and a Friday or whatever. It would be Friday night and Shabbos day. Maybe that's why Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says his opinion. If she was nursing, she doesn't have to work as much, and we give her extra food. Darish Rabbi Ula, we're on 65b2, the second column in the art scroll. Darish Rabbi Ula, Rabba, Apischa de Benesia. Ula Rabba, the great Ula, made a drasha at the doorway of the house of the Nasi. Alpha Pisha Amru Einan. Okay, so there's a big halachos. We're not going to talk about this much, but Alpha Pisha Amru Einadam Zanes Bana Uvnosuk Shenktanim. Even though they said that a person doesn't have to feed his sons and children when they're katanim, and we kind of saw this, I think, in the previous paragraph. How much halachically are you required to actually feed your kids? Avalzan ketanik tanim. Your very young kids, you have a requirement and obligation to feed them. So we saw, I think, in the previous paragraph that the boys, you could let the boys fend for themselves, but the girls, you have to give them something because it's not right to make the girls beg or whatever to try to get to fend for themselves. That's what we saw in the previous paragraph. So Avozan katanik tanim, you have to feed your kid, you have to provide food for your kids when they're very young. Ad kama, so how, until what age must you support them? Ad ben sheish, until they're about 6, kid Ravasi, as according to what Ravasi says. Ravasi says, Katam ben sheish yotze be'er imas. A child who's 6 years old or up to 6 years old can go with the Erev of his mother. So this is saying if they're leaving beyond the boundaries of the city. We mentioned actually, I think 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the amount of bread that you have to provide for the wife when they're not living together. So we said one of the opinions had to do with we saw Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. You have to have 2 meals. Rabbi Meir, I think, says 2 meals of weekday food, and Rabbi Yehuda said 2 meals of Shabbos food. And we said they're not arguing; they were both lahakel, because Rabbi Meir ate more food on Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda ate less food on Shabbos because he had fancier food, so he didn't need as much stuff to go together with his bread. So we saw that a couple weeks ago. So the halacha is that you need 2 meals for every person, but if you have a kid less than 6, you don't have to put food for the kid. As long as there's food for the mother, the kid goes with the mother. So up until 6, the kids include with the mother. So just like you would have to feed, you would have to feed the kid along with the mother. Bimai, how do I know this? Miditani, because the Mishnah says, if she was nursing a child, we reduce her the amount that she has to earn from working. Let's say we said the warp, the warp and the woof threads that she would be making, whatever. We have to give her extra food. My time. Why do we have to give her extra food? Isn't it because the kid needs to eat with her? So obviously, in that case, that's meinika. But even when the kid, when we learned 18 months or 2 years, we saw it about a month ago, and the kid isn't nursing, but still the mother needs to get a food allotment to give to the young child. So the Gemara says, Dilma mishum dechola. Maybe she needs extra food, not because of the kid, but maybe she's considered a chola. She's sick. Im kain. So the Gemara says, if so, listening im haisa chola. It should say if she was sick, the husband would have to give her extra food. Ma'im haisa meinika. Why did it say because she's nursing? Because it's because she needs more food for the kid. Then the Gemara asks again, maybe this is teaching us the stam menikos cholos ninhu. A general woman who's nursing is considered to be a chola, to be considered sick. So maybe that's what the Mishnah is teaching us. So we're not concluding yes or no, but it's a strong enough point to be included. So I mean, I guess a possible nafkamina, a halachic din that would apply on this would be status of nursing mothers during a fast day, potentially. But then again, but there's not really a one size fits all answer, probably. Okay, Inmar, we learned Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Mosifin lo yain shayayin yafal chalav. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says we increase the wine allotment for a nursing mother because the wine helps the milk supply. Okay, Hajun alach afapi. We will return to you, Perik afapi. Let's start the 6th chapter, Metzias Isha. Samach Yamid Beis, 9 lines, 10 up from the bottom, 65b4. As we merited to to finish this parak, may we merit to start and finish and understand many, many other prakim in Shas and in Tanakh and in Halachas and Shulchan Aruch. Metzias Isha Masidel Baila. Okay, so first thing we should know, this is pretty interesting, but wait, before we do this, I had one other thing to mention that I forgot to mention. Back on 65b2, Lishna Mialia, we said Ochelas could also mean eating. So just another example, the Gemara doesn't like to say that someone was blind. When the Gemara says that someone was blind, they call him Saginar. He sees very clearly. It's a euphemism. It doesn't want to use bad things. So it kind of goes back to, I think it's on Daf Gimel in Psachim, that Gemara says always try to use a nice way of explaining things and not a unnice way of saying things, because it's, in certain places the Chumash says a behema asher lo tahora, the non-clean animal, and it didn't go out of it. It went out of its way to say that it added letters and words to say the non-clean animal instead of saying the tamei animal. So that was just an example of Lishna Malia. Ravarn rarely, when he talked about a certain person, he said the tzaddik so-and-so. There was a Lashon Saginar. He meant that the guy was a Rasha, but he said the tzaddik, Shmir Bero. Okay, Mishnah. Mitzias Isha, if a woman finds a lost object, Umaisi and her earn. So Rashi, Tosfos says that Rashi had this parak as the 7th parak. In our text, this is the 6th chapter. But Tosfos says that Rashi had what we have as the 6th, as the 7th, and what we have as the 7th as the 6th. And Tosfos explains that there's a certain logic for Rashi. Rashi felt that the content of the Mishnah at the beginning of what we have as the 7th chapter follows the halachos that we were just learning better. But Tosfos describes that the Mishnah here also follows the content we were talking about, because a couple Mishnayos ago we were talking about that the husband gets the woman's wages and he has to feed her, and it talks about how much does she have to work and this and that. So now this Mishnah talks about that Masid El Abayla, that her wages that she makes, the husband keeps them, and we'll see the Gemara is going to. I think it's the Gemara is going to say. So even though that halacha was already taught to us, we already know that the Gemara the Gemara is just including it to tell us new halachas. So it's not teaching us something that we didn't know, that Masid El Abayla. We know that the husband, we know from before, the Gemara already told us that the woman gets to keep the wife's earnings. But for some of these other halachas, it didn't talk about yet, so it repeats it in order to teach us the new halachas. Umasi Yeden, her earnings, the belong to the husband. Viru Shasa. What about inheritance? So there's 2 explanations for inheritance. One explanation is if, let's say, from her side, she inherited property. So the property is hers, but the husband gets to use gets the payros. ArtScroll, I think, calls it something like usufruct. I guess that's some type of legal thing. We had it before, but we said that the property, he's able to use it and derive benefit from, let's say it's an orchard, he could sell the harvest and this and that, but he's not allowed to touch the actual principle, the land itself. So that's one opinion, is if she received an inheritance. And there's another explanation that says that if she would die, he would inherit any property that she would have owned. So Virushasa, he only gets the stuff that it produces during her lifetime, but he's not allowed to sell it. Boshta ufkama shala, if she was embarrassed or reduction, so she was injured in some type of injury, but someone else injured her or someone, so Boshas ufgam belongs to her. Because if someone gets injured, there's 5 things you have to pay: the nezik, the actual damages, the tsar, the pain, repoi, the doctor bills, sheves, the amount of time that she was off of work, and boshes. So obviously tsar would be her because he had pain. The sheves, the loss of income, that would definitely go to the husband. because normally if she would work, he gets the her earnings. If she can't work, she would get the disability that she's getting from not working. And the repoi, the doctor bills, he would also have to pay because the husband, as part of mizonos, is providing food for the wife, also has to pay for doctor's bills. So those, it's clear that those three payments, two go to the husband, one goes to the wife. But both of Gama Shalah, the Tanakama says that Boshas and Gam both go to her. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer Bisman Shebeseser, if she was injured on a part of the body that's covered, Lash Nechalakim V'lo Echad, she gets 2/3 of the payment, and the husband gets 1/3 of the payment. Bisman Shebegale, but if the injury is something that's an uncovered part, the other people could see it. Losh Nechalakim V'lo Echad, he gets 2/3 of the part payment, and she gets one. So even though she's the one who gets injured, sometimes it's considered more of a I shouldn't, the word humiliation isn't accurate here, but it's he's a victim also. Obviously she's a victim. We're not taking that away from her, but also to a certain extent, he was harmed by her having an injury. And if it's an injury that other people, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says that when it's something that other people could see, more of those damages, of those payments go to him than to her. Shalah, Yinosin Biat, his part gets paid immediately. Vishalah, her part, Yilakav Karkav Hu Ochaperos. You should buy with them real estate, and he can eat the crops that the land produces. So, on this last point, there's one thing I don't understand. Well, there's a bunch of things I don't understand. I texted someone from Kirby Avna, he's an Israeli in Kirby Avna, but he's been living here for a while. It's a friend of Jacob, actually, because I know he knows these Gemaras, and he didn't respond, but I texted him if he could help me understand some of the stuff going on over here. There's a halacha that if you get injured, or if someone gets injured, the person who damaged can pay money, or they can pay in with real estate. And the halacha is from Xeris Akasov, from Drashas, that because in halacha there's three levels of land. There's prime land, medium land, and bad land. I think for the most part, it's not in real estate 101 that it depends on the location. It's not good location, okay location, and bad location, but I think it's how fertile the land is, what it could produce. The high quality land, medium land, and low quality. So let's say if a woman her husband dies, and the estate wants to pay her real estate, they're allowed to give her the lowest quality land with the value of whatever her ksuva is. In regard to damages to Nezikin, if you want to pay with real estate, the halacha is you have to pay with idios the highest level of land, because in Parshat Nishmatim it says meitav sadeo meitav karma yishalim. Meitav from the word tov, he has to pay the best part of his vineyard or the best part of his field. So if the way that this Mishnah says, it sounds like the damager can pay with money, but her the amount that goes to the wife doesn't get put in a bank account, but the husband or whatever would buy land with that money, and the halacha is any money that would come to a wife while she's married, whether it's a Yerusha or whatever, real estate would be real estate, and the husband gets to use whatever the field produces, but he can't he can't sell the field or get what we would say touch the principal. He can only use any interest that would accrue. So I don't know why the Gemara necessarily says that you buy real estate with the land. Couldn't they give them real estate also for her portion? And he could pay, unless it's just talking about a case where the person who committed the damage would rather pay cash and not land. But obviously, if the guy would pay land, the husband could sell the parts of the land that belong to him, and the parts of the wife he wouldn't be able to sell. So the Gemara says, "My Kamashmalan, what is the Mishnah telling us? Tanina, we already learned. A father gets he gets the benefit from marrying off his daughter by kasef. So if someone's mekadesh him with kasef, the father gets to keep the money. B'shtar or b'biyah, the father gets to make the decisions. He also merits anything that she finds. If finders is not keepers, the finder, the father keeps it. And again, this is relevant to the halachos of hashavas aveda. Whatever obligation you'd have in hashavas aveda, that would also be for the father would have to return the lost object. But if it's something that you're allowed to keep, the father gets to keep it. She found it and he gets to keep it. And if she makes a vow, the father could veto them. Mekablas Gita, if before he married her off, but before chuppah they got divorced, the father accepts the bill of divorce on her behalf. He's not allowed to eat the if somehow she would own things, the father isn't allowed to benefit from whatever the fields produce. Nisays, but if she got married with chuppah, Yasser lefabal, the husband has all of these rights, plus he has more rights. Shehu ochel peres b'chaya. He's allowed to eat or benefit from the fruit that her land would produce, even while she's alive. So this was in the beginning of Kedushin, I think. Yes. Yeah, it was before Memvav Amar Beis and Kedushin Daf Gimel and Daf Yod. So we already know that the husband would get the mitzvah and ochel peres b'chaya. So why is it teaching us this? We already know before, and as Ramosha pointed out in a share in 1999 on Hanukkah, he discussed why isn't there a Masechtas Hanukkah, and he answered because Torah Shabbal Peh, we know that Torah Shabbal Peh, they wrote down the minimum needed to be written down, or even according to the opinion that it was that even any text of Torah Shabbal Peh is not allowed, even an oral text. They only made the oral text as minimum as was needed. But because at that time Megillas Tainus means the Megillah of fasts, days that you weren't allowed to fast on because they were minor holidays. That was Torah Shabbal Peh that was written down, and it was, and a lot of it was about Hanukkah. So Moshe said there was already a Torah Shabbal Peh document about Hanukkah, so they didn't need to put it in Shas because there was already a Torah Shabbal Peh document. We don't repeat things that we already know from another source in Torah Shabbal Peh. So that's why that's the basis of the Gemara's question. We minimize the amount of Torah Shabbal Peh that we have to be, even when Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and Ravami and Ravashi wrote, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi did the Mishnah, Ravashi and Ravasi sealed the Gemara, they sealed it with the minimum amount. Why did it have to repeat something that we already know from other cases? So the Gemara answers, Boshtov Gama Itzur Chalei. The Gemara had to tell us about who gets her humiliation or her reduction in value in case of an injury. So let's say I broke my fifth metatarsal. I can't kick. I can't walk. Baruch Hashem, today I got a good X-ray. That's why I'm not in the boot. He said I don't need the boot anymore. I give the boot. So in that case, it's temporary, but there were Sheves involved. I wasn't able to do all activities before, but also if you would put me on the slave market, someone with the broken fifth metatarsal wouldn't be as much as someone who had an okay fifth metatarsal. So that's the actual damage, the reduction in value, but the pagam.
Did you sue yourself?
I know a lawyer who can help you with that. So looked at Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Rabbanan had to teach us that the machlokus between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. about does the Boshas of Gam all go to the wife, or does 1/3 or 2/3 of it go to the husband? So it repeated something that we already know because it had to tell us something new. So while it tells you something new, it repeats something that it did already tell us. Tani Tana Kamei de Rava. So a Tana there were people who their job was to memorize and review and make sure that because you didn't have Svarm on the shelves in those days. You had to ask the person, what's the proper text of this Mishnah? So the Tana was reading a Mishnah in front of Rava. If a woman finds something, it's her own. Rabbi Akiva Mer Labayla. Rabbi Akiva says it belongs to the husband. So obviously it conflicts with our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says Mitzias Isha is Labayla. And this Tana said that a Mishnah said Mitzias Isha La'atzim, Rabbi Akiva said Labayla. So one thing we could say, well, we saw in earlier Mishnayos, not so long ago, we had Mishnayos where the Gemara says, who is this Mishnah according to? Is this Mishnah according to Rabbi Shimon? Is it according to Rabbi Meir? So we could say, we'll see that the Gemara might be asking here, who's the Tana of our Mishnah, but it's not saying it in an explicit way. It's kind of saying it in an oblique way. So according to this Tana, our Mishnah would be according to Rabbi Akiva, which is not a bad thing. But that's not exactly the context of what Rabbi said over here. Amar Le, Rabbi says, Hashta Umadafa, as we turn to Samach Vav Amud Aleph, in regard to extra income that she earns. Demasi Adehi, which are her earnings. Amar Rabbi Akiva La'atzma, Rabbi Akiva says she gets to keep. Mitziyaso Lo Kol Shekain, shouldn't she certainly be able to keep a Mitziyah? Ditnan, because we learned in a Mishnah, earlier was before in Daf Nun Tes Amud Aleph. Konim shani osel leficha. If a woman made a vow for prohibiting the husband from getting anything that she makes, eino tzarich lahafer. The husband does not need to nullify or veto that vow because it doesn't take effect. Rabbi Akiva Omer Yefer. Rabbi Akiva says he should veto it. Shematadif lavyoshim in a ra'ila, because maybe she'll make extra earnings. And even though she's not allowed to make a vow to restrict her husband from which halachically is his, but from the extra income that she would make, that the vow could take effect on that extra income. So you see that Rabbi Akiva, so the Tana said that Rabbi Akiva says that the husband gets to keep the mitzvah. So Rabbi says it doesn't make sense. According to Rabbi Akiva's own shita, she would be allowed to keep her extra earnings above that minimum amount. So mitzvah would be not considered her regular earnings. That would be extra earnings. So according to Rabbi Akiva, it would be hers. So Ella Epoch, mitzvah seishal b'ayla Rabbi Akiva mer la'atzma. So Rava says that the Tana must have flipped the opinions in his head, and Rabbi Akiva holds that she gets to keep mitzvah if she found a lost object, and the Tanakama or the Rabbanon hold that the husband gets it. So according to the way Rava fixed the text of the Mishnah, it ends up that according to that, our Mishnah does not follow Rabbi Akiva, which is not the end of the world. It's not a big thing, but it happens to be that's what that would be a consequence of fixing that brisa that way. The Gemara asked, but Kiyasa Ravin Rabbi Yochanan, when Ravin came to Bavel, he said that Rabbi Yochanan had taught when she makes extra money without any extra effort, everyone agrees that it belongs to the husband. So we're going to see something very humorous very soon. The machlokas is if she made a lot of extra money because she worked a lot of extra harder. If she made extra money because she worked harder, maybe she should keep it. Tanakama Savar Labayla. The Tanakama still holds that they belong to the husband. Rabbi Akiva Savar La'atzmo. But Rabbi Akiva holds that she does get to keep it. Now, when we talk about mitzia, normally when you find a mitzia, you're walking and you find it. So it doesn't involve exertion. So, Rabbi Kiva holds its la'atzma. So Rapapa says mitziyasa kadafa sha'idei chaktami. No, your question was based on thinking that you're walking down the street, you find something, it's a very easy thing. But no, mitzia is considered a lot of extra effort to find it. Plukta Rabbi Kiva v'Rabbanan. And this is the machlokas between Rabbi Kiva and the Rabbanan. So Rashi says that the majority of found objects are, you have to work hard to find them, like fish that came up on dry land, or a lame, not a lame duck, but a lame deer. Because normally deer, it's very hard to get. You can't catch a deer. Nothing runs like a deer. But if she found a deer that was stuck somewhere, it's worth a lot of money. You're able to find, but it's an unusual thing to be able to find where the thicket that the deer gets stuck in. Or she found buried treasure. It wasn't just laying there. She went with the metal detector on the beach looking for the scrap metal. Papa asks, what if she does two jobs at once? Is that considered extra work or not extra work? Or extra effort or not? By Ravina, 3 or 4 at a time. What's halacha? Teku. We don't have a answer. So listen to this. Listen to what Rashi says here. Let's say that she was, so nowadays we have scarecrows. In those days they had a shomer kishuim, the squash or cucumber guardian. Now you just have a scarecrow, but then they have a person. So even a person who was severely not mobile was able to just sit in the field there to shoo away the animals. So let's say that she was out in the field to shoo away the animals. Vitava pishtan, and she was spinning flax. And she was hired to teach singing to other women. And she was an incubator. She was keeping eggs next to her body because there was no mama bird or chicken to keep the eggs warm. Or silkworms. And also they were, I think, Notzrim wasn't mean they were Christians. I think Notzer is the verb for cutting off grapes. Oh no, that's Botzer, not Notzer. But they're, so at the same time in the field, or lahavdil, you're walking to shoo away the thing, or maybe even she's dropping seeds in, and she's a sergeant, a boot sergeant. She's a sergeant in boot camp, so they're singing a cadence as they're going. So she's doing many, and she's has the eggs, so she's incubating the eggs. So is that considered that she's doing 6 jobs at once? But they're easy to do at the same time. As you're walking, she just drops a thing, and this. She's teaching them a song. So the Gemara says teku. Okay, it's 7:08. Yeah, so we'll leave it here at these 2 dots. There's a Mishnah not too far down, just a little bit more than 10 lines down. But I don't fully understand the Gemara. This is what I called an old friend to try to understand parts of this Gemara that I don't understand. So we'll leave it here. Samach Vav Amud Aleph, about a third of the way down. So next week,